Find it. All right, another big topic this morning. Bruce Jenner is now a woman. The word transgender is echoing through households all over the country. Is that a good thing? Part of our cultural evolution? Or does it mean the death of decency? To discuss, Ryan Anderson, a senior fellow in American Principles and Public Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Ryan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, broke the ratings, broke the internet, was a big deal, a big spectacle. Do you see this as part of the solution or the problem?
I think this is part of the solution in the sense that we all need to be having a conversation about this. This is great that Bruce Jenner is telling his story. I think it'll be important that we hear other people's stories, that we hear Walt Heyer, who has spoken about his experience being transgender, and then he had the sex reassignment surgery. It didn't help him in that situation. He's speaking about that. We should look to Dr. Paul McHugh, the chief of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Medical School and Johns Hopkins Hospital. He stopped Johns Hopkins from doing sex reassignment surgery, said it created more problems than it solved. So I think we need to hear all these voices.
Why? Why do we need to hear voices about who it helped and who it didn't help and why it should be done and why it shouldn't be done if it is a matter of legal right and your own personal choice?
Sure. I mean, I just think we need to be having an informed discussion. I mean, we should know how do we respond in love to someone like Bruce. I'm not interested for the government taking sides one way or the other on these issues. I don't think the government should be involved. It should be up to each individual. But I think how we respond as a community needs to be based on good information, and that's why all voices, all stories matter.
But because of your first concern, how we respond as a community, you have forced the government to get involved because that reaction from the community has been overall or overweighted negative. Judgmental. We get to judge this. We get to say if it's good or not. We're going to balance voices on it. When you could argue this is a personal decision. We don't have community change about how I do my hair. Why do we have to have it about what I decide to do with my life? So the law has had to get involved because LGBT is now arguably discriminated against as a class.
Well, I don't know about that. I think we have tons of talk shows that talk about how you should do your hair. We have lots of community discussions about fashion.
But not your right to do your hair,
But no one's
certainly.
Suggesting that he shouldn't have a right here. Is anyone suggesting that Bruce Jenner shouldn't have the right to seek out the therapy or the hormones or the surgery if he ever opts for that option, if he chooses to? I don't know of anyone trying to limit his freedom here.
Well, certainly there are those who are doing exactly that, but they don't have the power to enforce it. You see that power come into play when it comes to same-sex marriage and the rights to be enjoyed as a class under the Constitution. That's the issue.
Well, sure. So in the case of tomorrow morning at the Supreme Court, we're going to hear whether or not states can define marriage for themselves. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells us what marriage is. There are good arguments that think marriage should be a genderless institution. It's just the consenting adult relationship between two people. Other people think there are good arguments that marriage is between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, a mother and a father. That's how the entire world had been doing it up until about a decade ago. I don't think 9 unelected judges can settle this question for the whole nation. This is the type of thing that needs to be settled democratically. And there are good reasons on both sides.
But if you allow it to be settled democratically, you can then play to cultural mores and norms that are not necessarily fair to everyone. As we saw with slavery, you're now seeing an evolution here in law and in culture with LGBT. They say, I get you may like it, you may not like it, but I want the right to do it. And the Constitution, as Representative Bingham tried very hard when he put together the 14th Amendment, extends to all people, and I'm a person.
Of course. So the Constitution protects equality before the law. And I think everyone in this discussion is in favor of marriage equality. We want the law to treat all marriages equally. The question is, what type of consenting adult relationship is a marriage? And that's the question that the Constitution doesn't answer. That's the question that the people have to answer.
Is that a legal question?
It's a policy question. And in this case, the people in the 4 states in the 6th Circuit, they went to the ballot box and they voted to make marriage policy as the union of a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, a mother and a father. If you're in favor of a different marriage policy, convince those citizens democratically and then win a vote. This isn't the type of issue for 9 unelected judges to solve for the entire nation.
But arguably, is it for a population whose mores change and go back and forth, or maybe they never do, but their feelings in their absolute way limit the rights of a class. And then it doesn't matter how many want it, right?
No one's limiting the rights of anyone. So in all 50 states, 2 people of the same sex can live with each other and love each other. They can have a wedding ceremony at a church or a synagogue. They can work for a business that gives them marriage benefits. None of that is being limited by the government. The only question here is what sort of relationship are the states going to recognize as a marriage? And that's a question that can only be solved democratically. Judges have no greater insight into the answer to that question than you and I have. So we need to have this discussion.
Their role is to say whether or not this right has a remedy under law. And That's going to be their question. When you look at the state of Alabama, the concern becomes you have people who 99-to-1 vote that they want marriage to be between a man and a woman. They have a constitutional amendment, and now those judges won't marry anybody else. That is an infringement of rights, many would argue, of the LGBT class that is excluded by that amendment. So if the Supreme Court finds otherwise, then those states would have to change their laws.
Right. If the Supreme Court rules in an activist way, if the Supreme Court says we're discarding the votes of millions of citizens in the 50 states who voted to define marriage as the union of a man and a woman, yeah, that would redefine marriage in those states. It would be a travesty.
Why?
It would be just like what the court did in Roe v. Wade. A culture war now over abortion because we can't make marriage policy democratically. Look at Europe. They don't have a culture war over abortion because they have settled their marriage policy with compromise solutions. Roe v. Wade took it out of the democratic process, tried to settle it once and for all 50 states. And now every 4 years at election time, abortion is the most divisive issue in American politics. Why would we want to repeat that mistake now on the marriage question?
Because if you didn't have Roe v. Wade, you would have had a cultural institution in place that said women don't get to decide what to do with their own bodies. And that
on the other side of that,
required legal help.
But the other side of that would be we would have a cultural institution that could protect unborn children from being killed in the womb. We could find compromise solutions like the 20-week bill. We're one of only 7 nations that allows abortion after 20 weeks. Why would we want to be in the company of those other 6 nations? They're not human rights champions. They're human rights violators. We would be able to have much better abortion policy in this nation if, as you pointed out, mores are changing, values are changing. We allowed it to change through the democratic process, not through the wisdom of the high court.
How do you protect those who are exposed to the slow movement of everybody else? That becomes the question. Law, culture, it's being debated. We'll see how it plays out in the court. We won't know till June, but it starts tomorrow. Ryan?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for laying out both sides. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Mick?